Good morning, welcome to Headline Focus here live on Core Politics with me, Rob Double. It is Thursday the 8th of March 2018. Let's have a look at what's making the political headlines today. So to start off with, there is one big story coming through today, and that is because it is International Women's Day today. And there is an announcement by Amber Rudd, the Home Secretary, or rather an unveiling of a major clampdown on domestic abuse and the legislative process around that. Now, the domestic abuse bill is going to be introduced, and what it proposes is tough new protection orders, could see suspects banned from drinking alcohol and electronically tagged to stop them contacting victims, and also a new definition of economic abuse as well, which is if people are denied access to jobs or money or are forced to take loans. Now, this comes under, part of a big government initiative. A new domestic abuse commissioner as well will be appointed to stand up for victims, monitor the provision of domestic abuse services, and hold the government to account as well. Amber Rudd, the Home Secretary, is quoted as saying, "It is appalling that in 21st century Britain, nearly 2 million people every year, the majority of them women, suffer abuse at the hands of those closest to them." Now, Labour also have announced an initiative today. Large businesses that fail to show how they are closing their gender pay gap would be slapped with a government fine. Again, more information will be coming out on this today, and indeed responses to the initiatives a bit later on, or rather as Westminster starts waking up. Next up, Nick Timothy. Now, you may know him. He was the former Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister Theresa May before the 2017 election, where because of the result and because of other reasons, particularly to do with how he was working with colleagues, particularly other Conservative MPs, he was moved out of Downing Street and effectively now is a commentator in his own right. He, however, has been pushing to the Chancellor, Philip Hammond, to end austerity. Now, austerity, of course, has been the policy of both the coalition government since 2010 and the government now to try and get the budget deficit down and to pay back any of the debts we have as a country as well. We are now in a budget surplus as a country. Recently, that was announced. So Nick Timothy, obviously still a very influential figure in the Conservative Party, is now pushing for now being the time to stop austerity and to start investing particularly in things like the armed forces and the NHS as well. This is particularly in the context of the spring statement, which is going to be next week by the Chancellor as well. However, you must always remember that Nick Timothy, of course, because of that 2017 election, is tarnished to some extent. He is not popular perhaps with some MPs who didn't like how he dealt with them whilst he was Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister. And also he was in part responsible for the 2017 election manifesto of Theresa May, which of course was not successful in the extent that it did not secure a majority for the Conservative Party last year as well. So that's just something to know about. Next story is UK free access for Gibraltar. Now, the UK is to offer Gibraltar continued barrier-free access to financial markets after Brexit. So the UK is negotiating for Gibraltar to be treated as the same as Britain, as the UK mainland, when we leave the EU in March 2019. Now, there is to some extent, a bit of a discussion and a bit of debate going on here, which could be turn particularly difficult as we get towards the decision-making and the signing-off process in terms of the Brexit agreement, particularly on a future trade arrangement. And that's because the EU insists that Madrid, aka Spain, can stop a transitional deal or future trade relationship applying to Gibraltar unless there is a Spain-UK agreement. So Spain could effectively veto the Gibraltar having the deal extended to them with the EU when it comes to Brexit in March 2019. Now, the fear is, from Gibraltar at least, is that Spain will use that pressure they have, that ability to veto the deal, as leverage to force talks about the ROC's constitutional position, aka Spain having some kind of constitutional influence, or at least more power over Gibraltar in the future. Now, obviously, Gibraltar could fall out of the EU next March without a transitional deal, without the same luxuries as the UK mainland would get, possibly, if there is no agreement between the UK and the EU and Spain on this matter. And obviously then Gibraltar would lose access to Britain's financial markets. Why is that important? Well, particularly in terms of the insurance sector, it is incredibly important to Britain. One in 5 British drivers, according to the Gibraltar government, insure their cars with firms based in Gibraltar. But also most of Gibraltar's trade is with the EU. So in terms of a Gibraltar economy, the Gibraltar government obviously want to preserve the status quo. But that is something which will be a discussion and possibly a key sticking point going into the Brexit negotiations in the next coming weeks and indeed months, right up until we get the final agreement confirmed. That's pretty much it for today. You're up to date. Don't forget you find all the latest on what we're doing here on Core Politics on our Facebook page and Twitter right here. But from me and all the team here at Core London, have a fantastic start to your Thursday.